Hey up, I'm Joe Law, and this is Yellowbelly Presents, the visual podcast where we invite industry leaders to share the stories, strategies and secrets behind their creative success. We're thrilled to welcome today's guest, Henry Lewis, the co-founder and artistic director of the groundbreaking Mischief Theatre. Henry's work has brought laughter to audiences worldwide with productions such as The Comedy About a Bank Robbery and The Play That Goes Wrong, winning multiple awards around the world. As a writer, director and performer, we'll explore the magic behind Mischief Theatre and the artistry of making people laugh. Henry, it's an absolute pleasure to have you with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here. I'm very excited. I think industry leader is generous, but I'm delighted. Thank you. Yeah.
We have got a few questions that we ask all our guests. Could you share with us a few of your inspirations? So a film, a song, and a live performance that have sort of inspired you.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I grew up watching, loads of kind of British sitcoms. That was kind of the thing I absolutely loved. And from quite a young age, I think I knew I really enjoyed comedy and really enjoyed making people laugh. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, a film, a performance and a song, you said.
Yeah.
So I think, a performance, I don't know, like a classic British comedy performance. I would maybe go for something like Rowan Atkinson in Blackadder.
As
like a performance that I just loved when I was a kid. And I think I was just like, oh yeah, wow. Like just a turn of phrase, a particular way of saying something, or, particularly good, that writing, I think, isn't it, for like just specific choices of words being funny, and that really love that. And then I don't know, I think a film, like in terms of like inspiration for goes wrong stuff, I love the comedy film Bowfinger, the Steve Martin film about where it's this sort of amateur filmmakers. They want to make a movie and they want to get this celebrity in it who Eddie Murphy plays, and but he's not going to be in the movie because he's this big star, and these guys are kind of just starting out. So they decide to kind of secretly film him while he goes about his life and try and cut that all together to make a film. Very funny film, I think. And a song I remember when I went to go and see a band called Fairport Convention, who are kind of, I don't know, like an electric folk band.
Yeah.
With my dad. My dad loved them, and they were absolutely amazing live. I remember seeing them like when I was young, and that being quite a formative thing.
I went to see Motorhead with my dad.
Did you?
Yeah.
I bet that was extraordinary. Yeah.
He stood at the back with earplugs in.
Right. Right. Okay.
Well, Lemmy's just like, it was the loudest thing. Apparently they were famous for, they started at the like legal limit you're allowed, as in like volume.
Yeah.
At the end of every song, Lemmy, the legendary Lemmy, would point at the sound desk and go up. Bearing in mind they played like 30 songs or whatever,
my God,
so by the end of it was
yeah.
like, and I've had tinnitus since.
My goodness. That's,
So some of your early influences, you mentioned Rowan Atkinson there.
Mm.
God, I was a Rowan Atkinson super fan growing up. The Bean movie was one of my favourite films with Whistler's mother, and like I can remember like getting a big bag of M&Ms. I can remember the scene where he's there's a scene in the Bean movie where he's at the family's house in America and he's like chucking these M&Ms up.
Yes, yeah.
And like
I mean, all of that stuff is brilliant, I think, and it's just like it's so simple, I think, and it's so just like one character at the center of it. I just think, absolutely brilliant. I mean, another influence I should mention to do with kind of goes wrong stuff is a guy called Michael Green, who wrote a book back in the late 1950s called The Art of Course Acting.
Yeah.
And that's a book all about his like anecdotes from his time in amateur theatre. Mm-hmm. And it's a very, very funny, very kind of well-observed book. And then that was so popular that he then started doing course acting plays, which were kind of, plays where things go wrong, which had been done before, like obviously like the Mechanicals of Midsummer Night's Dream and everything is sort of the similar idea, but like he really did it with different genres and all that kind of thing. And I was fortunate enough when I was in youth theatre to work with him, and I was like, oh wow, that was a real kind of eye opener for me of like, oh my goodness, yeah, this is just something that I think is comedy, but also something that is so good live, because it's all about being in the moment and people being there, and the pressure of the audience is the stakes for the whole thing.
Yeah.
So it always works works well as a live thing.
So did you know from like quite a young age, those early inspirations, did you know that I want to do that? I want to be a comedy actor or make my own work? Or was it not until later that those sorts of things solidified?
No, I think I did. I think I knew that. I think I wanted to be an actor in general, and kind of was did lots of youth theatre stuff, and I wanted to go to drama school. I knew that from when I was kind of certainly in my early teens. But I think that because comedy was something that I really kind of shared with my family, particularly my dad, but my whole sort of family, we would watch that stuff together, and because we connected over it, I think I sort of thought that stuff is particularly cool, particularly kind of, I guess I didn't really think about it in that way at the time.
Yeah.
But the power of it bringing people together, I thought, certainly had an impact on me, and I think that, I liked that idea. I liked the idea of being able to make other people laugh, and that was kind of just a sort of a leveling thing, but also kind of just something that is sort of, I don't know, there's like a fundamental truth in comedy. Do you know what I mean? If people are laughing at something, it's because fundamentally they're kind of, there's an understanding and an agreement within that, which I think is really cool. And I think that actually, I reflect on that now, given where we are with Mischief, because the thing about Mischief is that you definitely do have a really broad demographic of people seeing those shows, and the audience is very much, I think, one of the reasons why the show's popular and why Play That Goes Wrong was run for a long time is because I think you can come and see, like, any age group can come and see it, and it's a rare thing that I think is really important for families and parents, is that it's something that adults can come along and enjoy, but also bring kids, also bring grandparents, also bring, the sort of like, moody teenagers who are, do you know what I mean? Everybody can come and everybody can kind of enjoy it together. And lots of parents say to us, that's really rare. That's a really rare thing.
Is that broad spectrum of audience something you keep in mind when you make your work, or is it just a happy accident? You made the work you wanted to make, and it just so happened that the audience for that was quite broad, or is it something you specifically make your work to try and achieve?
At the beginning, I think it was a sort of happy accident.
Yeah.
I think, but now more and more, as Mischief develops as a brand, you kind of you have an awareness of that, and you lean into that more.
Yeah. You spoke to something really powerful there, I think, which is the power of comedy to bring people together, and especially, I think, we were fortunate enough, we're similar age, I think, fortunate enough to grow up in a time when people on a Saturday night, like families, would gather around the same television set and watch the same program, and those would usually be comedies. And back then we were like inundated with what we now know as like all-time classic comedies. You could just switch the TV on and there'd be Fools and Horses, Royal Family, The Office, Little Britain, Blackadder, all these comedy shows were on all the time, and you would watch them together as a family. So it's nice that you say that parents come to you and say, thank you, the kids love it, my mum and dad loved it, the whole family loved it, because I feel like in the modern day and age, we're kind of fracturing a little bit more. We're kind of all behind our screens. We're never in the same room, perhaps like we used to be. So perhaps now, more than ever, it's a really powerful thing, comedy.
I think it happens less. I think that's absolutely right. I think that's a really good observation. I think definitely, probably 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it was more like people sat down together and had more of a shared experience because it was less on. And obviously now it's amazing because there's so many more options. You can go onto a streaming service and watch not a million, but a lot of different things. So everybody can be sort of siloed off into their own thing, but there are less communal experiences. And I think that's why, even as AI sort of creeps up on the whole industry, I think comedy and theatre will hopefully be like, I think there'll be kind of it'll be that I think there'll still be a place for that, because I think theatre is actually obviously there was COVID, which was obviously disastrous for theatre, but I think it's had a huge recovery, and I think it's because stuff that brings people together is what people are seeking out.
Yeah, I think it's particularly pertinent that you mention AI, because it kind of makes you question what it is to be human. It's going to replace so many different jobs and traditionally, I was going to say traditionally human activities. What a weird sentence that is. But you're right to say the things it can't replace are things like live theatre and human creativity, and it kind of gets to the core of what it is to be a person, to just like...
Yeah, I think so. And I think it does kind of, I don't know, like you see it like our audiences are quite a mix, and like we live in a polarized kind of world, and I think but it's always really fun to look out into an audience and see people who, I don't know, wouldn't necessarily get on at a dinner party but really laughing at the same thing. That's a nice thing.
It feels very British, the local Amdram society, and the bits of set falling down, and you see like little sprinkles of Fawlty Towers and Monty Python and all these. You're like, oh god, yeah, that's a little bit like... Do you feel like that Mischief and Mischief's works have been influenced by British life and culture? And following on from that, how has that translated when you've taken it all the way around the world?
I think that's a great question. I think yeah, I think it definitely is quite British in style. There's something about, I think there's like at the heart of being British, there's a kind of there's like silliness is part of that, an eccentricity, I think, and like kind of, you know, and I think that goes back to like, you know, like people sort of laughing, you know, like, I don't know, like 30, 40 years ago, more about like, you know, you still had a lot of aristocrats kind of swanning around doing mad stuff, and kind of, yeah, eccentricity, I think, is definitely a big part of kind of British culture. And that, like, you know, that's all tied in with the royal family and all of that kind of thing, isn't it? So I think for sure, and I think there's a recognition of that, like a big part of people's understanding of what the UK is when you go abroad is the royal family, because that is such a kind of global thing. That's kind of what people often think all of Britain is sometimes, if they've never been to Britain. So I think that sort of links in, and I think it's interesting because I think comedy often like travels less well than drama, right? Because you can take a story that you know, and plonk it down somewhere and people can kind of relate to it more, whereas comedy is more cultural, right? But I think we've been fortunate, because I think that for example, Goes Wrong stuff and that kind of out and out comedy, I think does translate better than other kinds do. But yeah, there's definitely a different take on stuff, I think, in different places. I mean, when we first had our conversations when we were doing Play That Goes Wrong with our producer on Broadway, he was kind of like, it was going to be interesting to see how this show does, and it was, you know, we were all a bit uncertain whether it would work in another country, because we'd never done that before, or I think we'd licensed it to a few other countries, but we'd never gone and performed it in another country. At that point, this is 2017, when we were doing Play That Goes Wrong on Broadway, and he sort of said, well, it'd be interesting to see what the American audience thinks, because he said sort of Americans don't like losers. That's how he put it. He was like, we don't have that thing. We want people to win, and we want people to kind of overcome adversity. That's what, you know, it's all about. And we sort of said, okay, well, these characters are kind of, they're not losers, but like they're not brilliant actors, and they're trying to cobble. We
love an underdog in the way that the Americans really don't.
Well, I mean, it was interesting, and I think they did relate to it. I think they
did. You have to tweak it at all?
Not much, no. I mean, only small, like little things, like, you know, you change interval to intermission or words like that. Just a, you know, common parlance there.
Maybe take out Bognor Regis or
Bognor Regis, more local references. Or things like, I mean, we had like when we recast the show there. There's two characters who are sort of stage manager characters, and those characters then became American when we recast. So they were kind of more like local. They were kind of like from the theatre company had come over from the UK, but those guys were more local. So yeah, I don't know. Like on the whole, like it's like not every international production everywhere has kind of, you know, really landed as a big hit, but in lots of countries it has worked, and it's proved to be something that has kind of that's been able to work in different languages and different cultures.
Are there a few countries you've taken shows to where it's really surprised you how popular it's been? Has it really like struck a chord somewhere? Like you say, some countries take to it more than others. Are there some cultures that you think have really taken to it in a way that maybe others haven't?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's never been a kind of there's never been a particular pattern, I don't think.
Yeah.
I think that, I mean, there's been, so the way we operate is we offer two options to international companies. You can license a replica production from Mischief, or you can license a non-replica production. If you license a replica production, then the script is translated into the whatever language it's going to be in, but everything else is sort of the same. So you get designs for the set, lighting plots, costume plans, props lists, everything, and usually an associate director from Mischief would go out to the country and put the show in with a translator. And so then you go and see it, and it is the same. The curtain goes up, the set looks the same, and everything is kind of is the same. The blocking is the same, except the only things that are different is the language and obviously those actors' interpretation of those parts. But then we also do non-replica productions where you just send the script and that goes, and then a local director with a local creative team will create their own version of it. And some people kind of really wanted to kind of do the original version, and some people kind of wanted to do their own take on it, and that's often because comedy it works in a slightly different way. And a good example of the non-replica, I think, being really successful is in Paris, where Le Faux British, which was the French language version of Play That Goes Wrong, ran for many years in Paris, and it was quite different, but it was a 90-minute version straight through, as all theatres in Paris tends to be 90 minutes straight through. And it was probably a bit more heightened, a bit more kind of, and a bit more kind of, probably we would, if you saw it in this country, you'd think is a bit more exaggerated. But that is the style in Paris. That's what people liked and wanted. And I think had they done the replica version, it wouldn't have quite worked. So yeah, the different versions for different places, I think.
When you've got such a successful mega hit like The Play That Goes Wrong, and you start to franchise it, if anyone of our viewers or listeners get to that point where they have a show and they want to take it to other parts of the world, is that a difficult thing to achieve? How does that process begin?
No, I think really it's just about sort of making connections and meeting the right kind of people. I think I would say that the trickier bit is getting the show up to a certain, getting the show to the point before that. I think if you've got something that's really proving very popular, I think taking the next steps, there's, a lot of people will kind of, there'll be people you can find who can help you to do that. The tricky bit is going from an idea to having something that is kind of in a shop window that enough people can come and see. And that's the really important bit. And I think that's why I think people, when you start out, you sort of think, well, I'd love to do this show, but it feels like such a mountain to climb to get this show on in the West End or on Broadway or somewhat, or even, to do a big kind of like #1 UK tour or whatever. It feels like a long way off and a big endeavor and an expensive endeavor. But I think if you're starting from scratch, you don't necessarily need to worry about that. I think you just need to take the first step. That's the thing. Even if you don't know quite what the second step is going to be, it's about trying stuff out, in whatever way you can. If it's a new play, get some actors together who find a space, read it, get an audience to come, even if it's 20 people, 30 people, small audience, just enough to get a sense of what people thought, learn stuff about it. Because I think we always do test runs of our stuff, and with comedy it's particularly important because laughter is almost like another character in the dialogue almost. But I think just trying something, even in a small way, and that could be as like a reading, or that could be by filming something, putting it out on social media. It's very easy to do that now. You'll learn so much, and you'll even if that thing doesn't become the thing, you'll learn lots from that, and then you'll be able to do the next iteration, which will be different and better and improved and enhanced, and then you learn more from that, and you get to do the next iteration. And the more, it's an iterative thing. You don't know, like, no one writes a massive hit straight off the page straight away. And most of big, certainly with theatre shows, like the big, huge shows that you see have had iteration after iteration after iteration. I mean, Come From Away is a good example, I think, of an absolutely amazing sort of show that I think had 10 productions before it arrived on Broadway, at which point it was a new musical, but actually there'd been 11 years. There'd been different productions where they tried different numbers out at festivals. Then it had gone, I think, to San Diego, then to Seattle for regional productions. Then it had like a laboratory kind of workshop done. So all... And there's similar examples for all sorts of things. Play That Goes Wrong, I think it was the 7th or 8th kind of run by the time we got into the West End. The same is true of Operation Mincemeat 6. Lots of these shows that have started on the Fringe You do iteration after iteration. You refine it. You get it in front of an audience. You learn. So yeah, it's about taking the first step. If you want to create your own stuff, do something. Just take a step. It won't, and accept that it won't be the perfect finished product straight away. Yeah. That's not the point.
What's the old phrase? It takes 10 years to become an overnight success.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
There's something. I can't remember if it was a book or a podcast, but I was watching something on YouTube that was discussing something they called the taste gap. And that's whenever anyone goes, you know what, I really want to make something. I want to write a song, or I want to make a play, or I want to write a TV show or a book. The reason most people stop is that they encounter something called the taste gap, which is you usually want to start something because it's something you're passionate about. And something that you're passionate about, you tend to be pretty knowledgeable about. So let's say you love comedy and you want to write a comedy. Well, your first draft is not going to be as good as your taste. Your taste tends to be, what's good. So in your mind, you want to write something like your inspirations. You might want to write a new Faulty Towers or Royal Family or a new play that goes wrong. But a lot of people go, oh, well, this isn't very good, so I must just be rubbish. So I'm just going to do something else. But
yeah, well, fascinating. I think that's absolutely right. And I think a lot of people sort of come to me and sort of say, well, I've written this thing, but people can't even get to the end of it, can't even finish it because they're just like, it's not quite right. And I think of course, that's absolutely the thing, isn't it? Of course, it's not quite. The first version of something that you do, especially the first thing you ever write. Yeah. If you're new to writing, for example, it's not going to be great. But the point is that
it will be.
Exactly, yeah. It will be, and embracing, I think, like failure or something not being right as part of the process, and sort of celebrating that, like it's almost a good exercise, I think, to be like, well, let's just write the worst version of this. Mm-hmm. Let's write the most cliched version of this. Let's write the version with all of these ugly bits in it and stuff, and let's have this bit where that doesn't. Let's have a version that doesn't even make narrative sense. Let's just get the ideas down there, because once you've kind of got clay on the wheel, you can rewrite it. And if you've got terrible pages, you can then refine that. It's all about refinement, especially with comedy. Yeah, refinement and editing, cutting. But I think you've absolutely got to be okay with falling flat on your face and doing it not well as a means to getting to do something well.
Sorry, go on.
Well, we did before Play That Goes Wrong, which kind of now I think in retrospect is sort of seen as one of the first things we did, but we did many things before that, which have not become sort of well known, and I think that's because they were kind of flawed. I mean, we did a like a sort of comedy magic thing at the Edinburgh Fringe the year before we did Play That Goes Wrong, and the year before that we had done like a Buffon show. It was kind of based on the sort of old kind of sort of ancient French Buffon comedy form, which was which had fun moments in it. It was quite kind of edgy, sort of quite offensive satire sort of vibe, sketches, but
less family.
Definitely less family friendly, but there was good stuff in it, and there was definitely funny stuff in it, but it wasn't, it was not a consistent show. I think the first 20 minutes was quite good, and probably the last 40 minutes was not good. Yeah. And we learned lots of lessons from that, and we learned lots of lessons about what sort of audiences found funny and on the edge, and what they found too much, and what they found a bit passé, and all of those kind of tonal lessons were learnt from that. And from the comedy magic thing, there was more about this magician and two assistants, and they bought this big kind of magic kit in a big box that was like do a show in a box, and it was kind of a sort of comedy thing. There were, again, funny moments in that, but we learnt about like combining like comedy and magic together, two different forms, and like how that works, and how you can blunder that, and how it can kind of you have to achieve both really well in order for them to slot together well. There were lots of lessons in that, and we'd done improv for years as well, and we'd done certainly shows that we were proud of, and certainly shows that we're just like, well, that wasn't very good. So learned lots about narrative and about being playful and sort of not being, lots of lessons in improv about not being tense and not being too worried and not, coming out sort of really, oh my God, really hoping and being incredibly sort of, operating through enormous tension. It's not actually great for comedy, and all of that kind of stuff. You start to kind of learn those lessons, and so all of that, had we not done all of that, we wouldn't have got to where we got to, and then had the idea to do Play That Goes Wrong and develop that. So yeah, I think it's you've got to be prepared to go out there and it not be great to begin with.
Yeah. So you started Mischief in 2008. You met other Henry and Jonathan at Lambda.
Correct. How
did Mischief start?
So it started in a very kind of sort of very modest way. I mean, we were doing. I was on the foundation course at Lambda. This was 2000 2007 to 2008 I think it was, and this was before actually I met John and Henry Shields, but we were doing a lot of improv as part of that course, and we really enjoyed doing that as a kind of year group. And I'd been to the Edinburgh Festival a lot with my parents and stuff, and I'd really enjoyed that, and had always kind of wanted to do a show at the Edinburgh Festival. And so I sort of I just put a notice up on the notice board at Lambda and sort of said, if you fancy doing an improv show at the Edinburgh Festival, come to this room, E10 at Lambda at lunchtime, and let's talk about it and let's see if we could do it. And it was the group of 30 of us in the year group, and I think like 13, 14 people turned up.
Wow.
So like quite a few people turned up at lunch, and there was a big conversation. I was like, we could definitely do this. And everyone was like, well, how are we going to do it? It was a big kind of, thing. And I was like, well, I don't quite know yet, but we'll figure it out. And they were like, but I don't know. We kind of done a bit of improv, but we were probably sort of youthful, youthful kind of arrogance probably on my part. And I was like, yeah, we could do this. But I think it was good because it was just that thing of just like, well, yeah, we're not great at it yet, but we'll get better, and we'll rehearse, and we've got more classes, and we'll come in after hours and do more improv and stuff. And people were, I think some people were really enthusiastic. Some were not convinced. I sort of had done a bit of working out of like how much it was going to cost. And I sort of said, probably everyone's going to have to put in 200-300 quid into a bank account or whatever so that we can make this happen. And I think people were a bit like, not sure, but everyone did do that. And everyone was like, yeah, we'll do it. And everyone found their 300 quid, and we were all completely broke students at the time, so it was quite a big deal to find 300 quid. And we put the money in, we booked some accommodation, and we applied to a bunch of venues, all the kind of big ones who rejected us, and to a few smaller ones. And one smaller one was like, yeah, we have a run, not for the whole festival, but for 2 weeks. We have this slot in 3:00 in the afternoon in this 80-seater theatre. Would you like to come and do it? And I said, yeah, great. And then we started to do rehearsal kind of every weekend. We would do like a Saturday, we'd do some improv, get together, and sort of be like, we're figuring out what the format of this show was going to be. It was going to be a comedy show, like just literally an improvised play. And we'd turn up, and the audience would give us a genre and a location. We'd improvise it, and so we went and did it, and it was pretty chaotic, and we didn't know what we were doing really. I remember the first show, we were like 2 people were running late from their train had been cancelled, so I was like, well, we've got to go on with 2 less people today. That's just going to have to be how it is. And we did it. I think I was operating the lights for the first show because we rotated that round, and Dave Hearn, who's still a huge part of Mischief now. I remember he was there on that first day, and we did a sort of improv play, and he sort of called up to me in the lighting box, being like, "Okay, I think we're done. How are we for time?" And I said, "Well, we've got 20 minutes left." And he said, "Okay, well, we'll do something else." So it really was very rough and ready. And I remember at the end, the 2 people who were late arrived at the venue in the last 5 minutes with their suitcases. So, I mean, that wasn't in any way, I don't think, good theatre, but it paved the way to be like, oh, actually, it'd be better if we were all here on time, and even the obvious stuff, and then the next year we came back with I think still a youthful but much more kind of well thought through show, and then we started to do scripted stuff off the back of that. So yeah, you got to start somewhere.
What was the transition from being a company that did improv shows into the more scripted stuff? What was that first little seed or spark that made you transition?
Well, there was a practical element to it because we had done improv because the group was kind of people were at different drama schools, so we met at the foundation course, but then that was a 1-year course. We all kind of went off and did different things, so but we at different drama schools and different courses. Some of us weren't at drama school anymore, so we were kind of, we didn't have necessarily, we couldn't, around the schedule of us training, kind of commit to doing a scripted thing. So the improv worked quite well because it was flexible, people could come and go. But then once we graduated, we had the ability, we had more time, and we had the ability to kind of to be like, we commit to, we need everyone for these rehearsals and we need everyone for this run of shows, and I think also at that point we had realized that improv was quite hard to sell tickets to. Like, people didn't like, it was fundamentally, and I think it still is, less so in the States and much less so in Canada, but and a bit like Scandinavia is quite kind of improv quite popular there, but it's tricky to get people to. We were just like, it's tricky because people just don't quite know what they're going to get. And that's hard, and it's much harder to sell someone a ticket for a show. It's like, we don't know what's going to happen, whereas you can go and see The Lion King and know exactly what's going to happen, and the whole thing's perfectly planned out and beautifully designed and everything. So we started to realize that was a tricky thing. And so then I sort of said, well, look, and that's why I mentioned Michael Green and the guy I'd worked with a youth theatre, and said, well, this is a really fun thing. And I knew there was something sort of similar about it, because I was like, it's still a live sort of thing. It still had a similar feeling to improv. The funny came in improv of like, we're going to try and tell this story and we don't know what's going on and we're walking this tightrope. And in improv, you want to see people walk that tightrope. You want to see them wobble, not fall off, but you want to see the wobble of it. And I thought, well, this has a similar thing, right? But it is completely scripted. And people would know what they were going to come and see. And we'd do a classic genre. We'd do a murder mystery, something that people would, everybody knows, everybody gets. So that was kind of that was the first moment of like moving into more scripted stuff.
And how did you start to develop the scripted stuff? Did you script it prior and then go and see what it looked like in the room, or did you just improvise in the room and play around a concept like a murder mystery, like you just said, and keep the good bits and scrap the bits that didn't work so well? How?
A bit of all of that. I mean, we wrote the script first, and myself, Jonathan Sayer, and Henry Shields wrote the script. We were living together at the time. In our kind of, it was like a year after we'd graduated, and we were kind of all just sort of working kind of sort of regular jobs. I was working in like a burger restaurant. John was running a call center. Henry Shields was in a pub, I think, and we would all sort of come back quite late at night into our flat in Gunnersbury, and we'd spend 2-3 hours each evening writing. So we got a script that was kind of probably 50 pages. And then we took it to the guys and we read it through, and we were kind of like, yeah, I think there's something to this, and there seems like a fun part for everyone. And we were excited by it. And then, we did lots of workshopping on it and rehearsing stuff. And we would add things and take things out, loads of cutting, loads of moving things around, until we had the first version of it, which we did at the Old Red Lion in Christmas 2012.
And you said there were many iterations of Play That Goes Wrong before it kind of took its final form.
Yeah.
So would you kind of go back to the drawing board, see what worked, see what didn't, see what the audience responded to and what they perhaps didn't respond so well to, and write a second version and do that and again until you were happy with the final product? Is that how that sort of process worked?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, we did the first version, and then the Old Red Lion said, we'd like you to come back. Actually, we've got a slot in March. Would you like to come back? And we were like, oh yeah, great. And that was a good opportunity, to have a month to do some rewrites and some tweaks and changes. And obviously at the beginning it was, we were doing all of the jobs. So we were building the set, designing the lighting. So it was we had those limitations. We could only do something if we ourselves could figure out how to build the prop or the piece of scenery that was required. So we were working within those limitations, and we sort of created a second version. Then we got a transfer to Trafalgar Studios, the small studio that's not there now, and we refined it a bit further then. And it was quite expensive to go there. The rent of the venue was quite expensive, so the only way we could make it kind of work financially was to do lots of shows. So I think we did 14 shows a week there. It was only an hour show, but 14, so we did 2 each night, 3 on a Saturday. And we were kind of we got very good. I think that was where we really learned as actors how to deliver the material well.
Yeah.
Because we were doing it again and again and again and learning and refining. That's one of the things I really love about theatre, is that you can just keep kind of crystallizing something all the way through a run. I think that's really good.
The response is immediate in theatre as well, isn't it? So you know
Yeah.
what's working and what's not so much. Whether if it's a filmed medium, you kind of left to guess what the audience are thinking. You've kind of just got to watch it yourself. And
you put it out there, and you're not so sure. Especially with comedy, I think, because the aim is to kind of get people laughing. You know quite quickly whether it's working or not. But also for comedy, it's very good to try comedy in a small room. To do it at the Old Red Lion, a 60-seat theatre, probably not full, with 20 people in or whatever. If you can get an audience of 20 people laughing, then in a room with not much atmosphere, it's going to be then easy to make 1,000 people in a 1,000-seat theatre, sold out theatre laugh. So it was iterative from there. We did the Edinburgh Festival. We then met Kenny and Mark, our producers, and they said, "Well, look, a tour with a big name, a big name actor had been taken ill, and so a tour had been cancelled. So there was a sequence of like 8 to 10 venues in regional touring theatres." And he said, "Well, look, if you can write a second half to this show, because it was still only an hour at that point, then we can put together a tour, and it'll be those weeks, maybe a couple of others that we'll find." And we said, "Yeah, we can definitely write a second half." And we could do a bit more with the set, because we had a set designer and stuff at that point. So we wrote the second act, took that on tour. That was supposed to be, it started as 8 weeks. In the end, it was like 20 weeks.
Wow.
And then
Did it take off immediately when you guys took it around the country on tour? Did kind of word spread about it?
Yeah, it did. I think at that point it did. And I think the Edinburgh Festival as well had been like a good kind of shop window for it. And lots of regional venues came to see it at the Edinburgh Festival. And so it was the Edinburgh Festival is an amazing place. If you're trying to do new stuff, I would say that is one of the best places to go and do it. It's become more expensive now than it was. It was quite expensive when we were there, but it is more expensive now. But I think it is a really good place, because whatever you're doing is one of the few places where there's an audience who want to go and see new stuff. And that's become less and less the case. Like in London, people are less up for taking risks, I think, generally. Obviously, 100%. There is still like a fringe theatre audience, but it's because people get so many more kind of, big IP musicals and all that kind of stuff. Audiences are a bit more risk averse because tickets are getting more expensive. Audiences are more risk averse. Whereas in Edinburgh, people are there to just go and see something new, something original. And so if you're doing something good there, you can absolutely find an audience.
Longest running comedy in the West End?
Currently running, I think it's now the 4th longest running play ever in the West End.
Wow.
So after Mousetrap, Woman in Black, and No Sex Please We're British, which ran in the 80s or from the 70s to the 80s, about 17 years.
When you start to get this runaway success, for such a long amount of time, it's just you guys working on the show, improving it, performing it, working super hard on it, and then it becomes this runaway success. What's that like? How's that to deal with? Is it?
It's really surreal. I think it's really surreal, because I think, and especially at the age we were, because we were 25, 26 when this was happening. It was really, really sort of surreal thing. It also, Play That Goes Wrong wasn't a kind of big immediate hit in the way that some shows are. I think it was more of a sleeper hit, like was what it was called at the time. Lots of people talking about it, was that it kind of was a bit more gradual. We didn't quite know, and we were sort of never quite sure what the next. At no point did we realise that it would be running certainly for 10 years, in the West End, and we never quite knew that it would. It's been very gradual. So I think at no point that we knew like from the Old Red Lion, we were like, oh, people seem to like this. This seems to be something that people are just sort of warm to in a natural kind of way. But beyond that, no, we had no idea what the sort of success would be, and it was strange. It was a really kind of thrilling but surreal experience.
You'd been doing Play That Goes Wrong for such a long period of time that when you finally got to work on your next show, which was Peter Pan Goes Wrong, was it quite exciting to get in the room and devise something completely brand new?
Yeah, it was. I mean, and that was the same. That was the same characters,
Yeah.
the same amateur dramatic society doing another show.
Cornway.
But it was Cornley. But it was really it was really fun to sort of do some new material. And we'd done Play That Goes Wrong for quite a while. We did it for like a year in the West End and a while on tour. But no, I mean, like, hugely kind of thankful for it as an experience. It was amazing. But yeah, we were excited to do other things and to try new things. We were sort of developing Peter Pan Goes Wrong at that time and the comedy about a bank robbery. We were writing kind of still while we were at the Duchess, doing that run. So yeah, we were kind of keen to explore other types of comedy, other kind of avenues. But Goes Wrong was very popular, so I think it was tricky to convince people about comedy about a bank robbery because it was a different kind of show.
Yeah.
And it was set in America, and it was it wasn't about these characters trying to put on a play. It was about just about the characters. Characters in Minneapolis. And still really fun and silly, but a different thing. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. I mean, ever since because of Goes Wrong and Play That Goes Wrong, and because we've added to that and grown that brand with the TV show that we did and Peter Pan and Magic Goes Wrong, that's become quite a powerful brand in its own right. So we're always trying to sort of balance, still continuing to kind of deliver that to audiences who really want to see it, and also sort of getting the most out of it in a commercial way, but also still developing new ideas alongside it, which might be harder to get people to come and see. Even though there's kind of a good Mischief audience base, it's obviously going to be easier to get people to come and see something that goes wrong in it than not.
Yeah.
So that can be a tricky thing because it's sort of there's a big pull towards Goes Wrong, and we'll do another one of those, obviously.
Yeah.
And so we're always trying to balance. Well, yes, we will do another one of those, but also we're going to try this new idea as well, and keeping the two kind of the two going.
Both sides are really important. It's important to give your audience who've been loyal and love your shows and have been coming to see you for years what they enjoy, but also to respect your creativity. And everyone who's creative has this natural desire to explore and find something new and do something different. And was there a shift where you had to kind of not only have a creative's hat on, which you had on for so many years, but suddenly did you have to have a business hat on? So suddenly you've got shows all around the world, different shows, or was that taken care of by someone else? Were you only ever have to be focused on the artistic sort of side of things?
No, definitely have had a business hat on at different stages in different ways.
Yeah.
I think when we first were doing shows on the Fringe, it was sort of, we were doing, like kind of all the jobs, producing the show, marketing the show, trying to convince, venues to come and see it. Also doing the other kind of creative jobs like building up sets and all that kind of thing. So yeah, there was a lot of different hats at that time. We were always trying to figure out, well, how can we were always from the beginning trying to figure out how do we make this sustainable? You know, I think we never really were kind of like, well, we just want to kind of try and apply for a grant somewhere and get the money in and spend it on the show, and then that's it, done. And that's, there's nothing wrong with that. Lots of people do that, but I think we were excited by being like, how can it be sustainable? Because if we can make it sort of sustainable at this level when we're doing it in a 200-seat theatre or whatever, then, we can definitely scale it up. And if we can do our Edinburgh Festival run and end up at the end with as much money in the bank account as we had at the beginning, then we can come back next year and we can, do you know what I mean, keep growing. I think we wanted to do that. So we were focused on that. But there wasn't much room to kind of, to be making sort of profits and things like that at that time, because we were just, it cost a lot to do. And we were still kind of, people were kind of on, occasionally we make a bit of profit, and there was a profit share system for everybody involved, because everyone was kind of working for free or for not very much at that time. And then we started to kind of, when Play That Goes Wrong went to the West End and we started to do bigger shows, more commercial shows, we worked with our commercial producers, Kenny and Mark, and myself and John, who are the directors of Mischief. Kind of, they very much produce the show, but we're kind of across it as well. And we're always talking to them about, the budget and what the cost of the show is going to be versus the money it can make, and making sure that kind of is sort of in check and working out. So yeah, there is definitely still sort of different hats to put on.
Yeah.
But but obviously I'm not running around doing every job in the theatre as we were when we were doing fringe shows.
One of your hats that you wear at the moment, it's a beautiful hat, is you're artistic director of Mischief Theatre Company. For someone who doesn't necessarily know what the role of an artistic director is, what does that look like?
Well, I mean, it's a role that can be slightly different in different organisations. It probably is a little bit different for us than it would be at like a theatre where, you've got a building and you're programming. That's often what an artistic director does. Is the main thing. If you're the artistic director of the National, the Royal Court, you're deciding what shows are going to be on, and you're probably also working with the board and the sort of the other senior people who run the venue to inform the artistic policy of the whole venue, and you're probably also directing productions at to a year or something like that at your theatre. That's what an artistic director would normally do within a building. Bit different when you're a theatre company that doesn't have a building, because we're not necessarily we don't have a theatre where we're just like, we're going to program the season. It's going to be 4 shows. That's not sort of what we're doing. So it's more sort of, I guess, just more sort of leading the company and creating and finding the new projects they're going to be. Myself, John, and Henry Shields usually are the writers of the shows that we do, and so it's sort of that bit of the job, the writing, but also then sort of talking to our team and working out how we're going to do this show and what where the best place is to start it, and should we try and start this new show in the West End, or should we try out of town and try a sort of a smaller version of it and then build it up, or what's the best way, what would be the right thing to do first, and what would be the right thing to follow next, and working with our marketing team, working with our CEO Joe on new developments. We've got lots of stuff that we're developing all the time, so talking to other people about that, and just moving things forward generally, I would say, is the main role.
Have you got any creative avenues that you haven't explored yet that you want to, either within Mischief itself or something separate? Is there anything in your mind that you're like, I really want to?
Yeah, there's lots of new ideas all the time. I think we've not sort of, there's lots of stuff we haven't done, and lots of new things. Yeah, so there's always there's always a sort of development list of like 10, probably about 10 things on it, and some are further along, and some are quite brand new ideas. New collaborations with different people. There's a few new developments that we're working on at the moment that are quite different from other Mischief stuff. So I think that's the exciting thing now, is that we've sort of had a sort of 10 years of establishing ourselves as the sort of creators of this kind of comedy stuff, and now I think it's exciting to not leave that behind. We're still certainly going to continue doing those shows, but also it's exciting now that we've kind of got a sort of
a base, a
bit of a base, but we were a bit established, and we've built up within our team a decent amount of experience of doing shows at that kind of scale. It's now, I think, fun to sort of see, well, what else could we do that is a little bit different, but that still appeals to a Mischief audience, and still sort of feels like it's in the right home within Mischief. So slightly more different stuff. So that, looking at doing a musical, and looking at doing a few other slightly different things, and a few other different collaborations with people outside Mischief as well.
So Mischief, by its nature, exactly as you described earlier, it's got its bases in improvisation, and perhaps as an outsider looking in, it might be a bit trickier than other shows or plays that have set scripts. You go in and you read a scene. How do you audition for Mischief shows? Is it different to how other shows audition, maybe?
It can be. It depends on the show.
Yeah.
But normally, no. I would say it's probably a fairly similar process in that you'd probably do a first round with a couple of members of the team. It would be a shorter sort of session, but you'd be reading scenes in the same way that you would be for most things. And then we usually do maybe a couple of rounds like that, and you maybe do it like a sort of final group stage where you get people together and we're looking at people as individuals, but also looking at the group and their chemistry together. And then there might be, like, because there's quite a lot of physical work, there's sometimes part of the audition would be not really sort of not as a sort of test, but we might sort of get you to if the character's got to do a big stunt or whatever, we might sort of get people to try that kind of thing out to sort of check that people are comfortable with that level of kind of physicality. If you're going to, there's a particular thing in Play That Goes Wrong, for example, there's big sort of trapeze kind of moment swinging across the stage. We've got to make sure that people are comfortable with that kind of thing. And there's a bit of that. But no, that's kind of generally the process. It's fairly straightforward. We're looking for people who obviously have good comedy instincts, but I think often musical theatre performers do really well within Mischief's kind of process, because I think quite a lot of the shows, you've got to be playful within it, but also you've got to be quite precise about sort of delivery and rhythm and that kind of thing. So yeah, if you've got a background in musical theatre, quite often that stands you in quite good stead. But that's not to say everybody we work with musical theatre performers at all.
It's almost like a cross between acting and choreography somehow, isn't it?
There's certainly that element to it. Yeah. And it's about, I think, as well as, like, especially coming into it, depends as well. We audition quite differently probably for something that's new than something that is an existing show. But coming into Play That Goes Wrong, or to a tour of, Comedy About a Bank Robbery or something, or like we have one of our shows, Mind Mangler, is on a cruise line, so we're often auditioning for new casts of that. It's being able to come into something that is existing, bring your own creativity to it, but still be able to execute the blocking in a precise way, because lots of it is based around physical stuff. Sometimes that stuff's hazardous, so it's got to be kind of precise to keep everyone safe and keep the shape of things going. And it's got to have enough structure to it that when covers and understudies obviously are coming in and out all the time, that the show, everybody knows the one show well enough that it's not shifting and changing too much.
When you're creating new shows, do you the actors that you cast in the new shows, do they bring their own ideas and creativity to it that end up in the show? Or do most of the ideas come from the three of you guys who are writing it?
I mean, we write a script, so lots of it is in that. But we also, workshopping is a huge part of our process. So for the new show that we've got opening at the Noel Coward this year, the Comedy About Spies, we've done, our development process has been, we've sort of been writing it. We've probably been writing it over a longer period than we would normally, over probably 2-3 years around other projects. And so we've kept coming back to it, doing a rewrite, probably did 3 or 4 kind of readings with our sort of core Mischief team. And then we did a big workshop in the autumn, so 6 weeks, which is longer than probably we would normally do, but it's quite a big show. So we built a couple of basic elements of set for some of the stuff that is very set dependent, and we would do sort of test audiences and that kind of thing. So that was, that's kind of that's sort of how we prepare. So certainly during the workshop phase, there's definitely improvised bits or suggestions from people that go in. We'll try a scene, and if it isn't quite right, we'll take it away and we'll cut and rewrite and stuff. So things are always changing, and certainly ideas from the team, absolutely, end up in the show, and as well the way in which I think the original cast performs in the show is kind of, I think we see that in Mischief more like a creative team role, in the same way that the designer designs the set. Those people who originate the character inform so much about sort of how it is and how it works and where the comedy comes. it's definitely seen as more that kind of role rather than just a cast member.
If you had any advice for someone putting on their own work, creating their own work today in 2025, what would that be?
I think like the two big things I would say is like to really, I guess, general points. Like I think, like be yourself. I think do the work that you want to do and that you are really passionate about and that you really believe in, because it takes an enormous amount of work. And I think you've got to believe in what you're doing in order to put that in. I think. I think it can be. There's a lot of people who will tell you you've got to do this kind of thing, and this kind of thing is not in vogue at the moment, or this kind of you've got to do this, and this is the or you sort of put that on yourself by seeing, oh, this person's done that, so we've got to be like that and do that. But actually, like the more distinct you are, the more true to yourself you are, the more true to your own kind of style you are, I think the better work you'll do. But also. It requires just a huge amount of persistence, which we've kind of touched on a bit. Like you've got to be able to, you've got to be prepared, I think, to put in the work, have it not quite work out, have setbacks, have knockbacks, to apply for the venue, not get the venue, try again. And I think just remembering that all of that is part of it. It's for no one creating your own work, it's never just a sort of plain sailing straight through. It just all falls into place. The setbacks are part of it, and if you can learn to embrace them and learn from them, and kind of be like, this is brilliant, actually this has not worked out because it means we've learned X, Y, and Z, and next time we can do it differently. If you can see it in that positive way, then I think it becomes a fun sort of chase towards something rather than an uphill slog.
So we're coming towards the end of today's podcast, so I just wanted to say before we finish, thank you so much for being here. It's been such a pleasure. I think our listeners and viewers have kind of got so much out of that. So thank you very much for being here with us.
Thank you so much. It's been so much
going to end
fun.
on one final small question, if we may, which is, if you could collaborate with anyone, past or present, who would that be?
Anyone past or present?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Alive or dead?
There's so many people, aren't there? I mean, there's so many people. I suppose I would say, like, certainly with my Mischief hat on, I think, it would be extraordinary to do something with the kind of old, the old school great comedians.
Yeah.
So Chaplin or Buster Keaton, Laurel and Hardy, Tommy Cooper, like those people, like to be able to kind of pick their brains about comedy, chat to them, work with them would be extraordinary. Yeah.
Henry Lewis, thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening. We really appreciate it. You don't have to, but if you fancied it, give us a follow. Lots of love, and we'll see you on the next one.